This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode is brought to you by the Friends of the Magic Word, and I want to particularly thank Stan Skrabit, who was the most recent person who has joined through Patreon. Thank you very much, Stan, for joining, and also he had taken advantage of the annual Patreon package, so this way that rather than paying on a monthly basis, you do it annually, and you also save 10% by doing that. But it still helps this podcast. So thank you, Stan. And for others who are interested, just go to the magicwordpodcast.com. You'll see a place there where you can pull down a little drop down and you can become a friend of the Magic Word. I was at the Magic Live, as many of you know, and had heard the daily reports from there. And following that, flew straight to Chicago, where I rented a car and drove over to Colon, Michigan. I didn't do any reports from that convention, but it was a good convention. I will say also that it was fun seeing different people who attend each of those different conventions. Some always go to Abbott's but never go to Magic Live, and vice versa. Nevertheless, it was good. But while I was at Magic Live, I know that some of you had noted that I was not in the best of health, and in particular, my heart had been bothering me, and also my breathing and not able to get around very much. Well, long story short, as I'm recording this right now, this is perhaps one of the most unusual places where I've recorded. I'm actually in my hospital room here today. So I had gotten checked in on Sunday of this last week, and then they started doing a series and a barrage of tests on my heart and kidneys and a gallbladder and everything else, and a CAT scan, a CT scan, chest exam, and everything. And it's just that I haven't been able to get a lot of rest, and I have been having some difficulty just in walking and keeping pace with everything and everybody. So anyhow, as long as I'm seated like I am now, I feel like that I can keep up with what's going on and report to you guys and gals what's happening. And so I want to thank you all very much for your expressions of care and support that I got while I was at the conventions. And I'm sure that's the way you feel then now, is that I will remain in good health, or rather get back into good health sometime soon, because we got a lot of stuff to report on. The next travel plan I have is to go to the TAOM convention in Houston, Texas, which I hope that you're able to make as well. I'm going to be the guest of honor, one of the guests of honors, along with Scott Hollingsworth, and then also will be honoring Bill Palmer as a living legend this year. So a lot of stuff going on, and I know a lot of my friends are coming out for the convention just because of my participation in it, and I thank you all very much for doing that. Anyhow, so that's kind of what's going on with me right now. I thought I might give you that little update. And so they're saying, yeah, we might have a heart cath tomorrow. So I thought I better record this today, because I probably are not going to feel very good tomorrow to record something for Thursday. So anyhow, that's all there is to report here for right now. And I can give you an update next week after I hopefully get back home and back in the pink. But for now, I want to introduce you to our guest this week, Mr. Dean Gunnarson. When I was at the SAM convention in Appleton, Wisconsin, he and I sat down and we talked for a while about the fact that being an escape artist is something unique. I've only known maybe 3 or 4 full-time professional escape artists in my life. I mean, most do some escapes on the side, but they're magicians, and they kind of do that also. But this being the 100th anniversary of Harry Houdini's death is kind of important. I think that we recognize and honor that, and we talk with Dean. And when I spoke with him, he had just completed a water barrel escape, which was pretty cool. And he, again, talked about his career and his narrow escapes from death, and rather harrowing. So just a lot of stuff to report. I'm not going to divulge too much, because I give some of that on the front end of this as I introduce him. So please welcome my guest here this week, Mr. Dean Gunnarson, here on The Magic Word. Today I've got with me someone who is a unique performer in our art. I talk with so many people who are close-up magicians, illusionists, and everything, but a couple of the allied arts I have not spoken to with very often. I've had a couple of ventriloquists, and I believe one other escape artist that I've spoken with, and that was Jonathan Goodwin. And I got with me today Dean Gunnarson, who is known as the world's most dangerous magician or escape artist. What is the exact title?
Well, Ripley's, believe it or not, gave me the Ripley's record for the world's most daring escape
artist.
So, I mean, I won numerous magic awards around the world, presented as the world's greatest escape artist. But when Ripley's gave me the title most daring, I thought it was a little bit more
right,
because a lot of the escapes that I've done have been a little daring.
That's true. But again, the people who are listening to this, perhaps you may have seen him on several television specials that have one of them is Magic Goes Wrong. Had a few things that happened there, which you don't want things to go wrong when you're doing escapes, but there have been things that have gone wrong, and it was being televised at the time or being recorded, so that was on there. But also other kinds of escapes from, I'm not just talking about chains or getting out of straitjacket or something, but I'm talking about doing something that is death-defying with cars crashing into you or escaping before there is dynamite blowing up and other kinds of things in which your very life is a danger and hangs in the balance of just by a thread. And I'm sure there have been a lot of problems in which they have been close calls and others that, where you've broken bones and lost body parts, as you said, and other kinds of things that have happened. And so,
absolutely.
And as he said, just kind of a multi-award-winning magician from around the world. And again, there are so few people who do these kinds of escapes, particularly dangerous types of escapes. So that's why he's in demand around the world, because people want to see this, because and to see it live. I mean, we were at a convention right now in Appleton, Wisconsin, where we saw two things happen. One was an upside-down straitjacket escape that Houdini II had done that was from a 100-foot crane. And then Dean had done a water torture or water cell escape from not the milk can, but from a 55-gallon drum with ice water while being bound and put in there and chained.
The ice water was not intended. Right, it was so cold and raining just before you didn't get a chance to heat it up.
Heat it up.
And just because I'm from Canada doesn't mean I like cold water. I hate it.
So anyhow, with that as a background, I just wanted to introduce you then to my guest here today, who is a friend that I don't get to see very often because, again, he's from the cold north, although he's from my home state of Texas. Please welcome Dean Gunnarson. Hey there, Dean.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'm very honored to be part of your distinguished and legendary podcast.
Well, thank you.
Honored to be here.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you on here. You have accomplished so much. Did you get the Melbourne Christopher Award?
No, I haven't got the Melbourne Christopher Award. I mean, I got lots of different awards. Like, I've been performing for over 45 years, traveling, doing escapes. And like you said, a lot of television over the last 40 years. Back in the days when you could still make a living doing television.
Sure.
Not like now when they want everybody free, but I
remember the one that you were in early on because my business partner Banachek was doing a Buried Alive illusion with William Shatner.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time that it was raining then too, and it seems like that as he was coming out of there, that just the mud and everything, it was pretty impressive. But what was the escape that you had done?
Yeah, so that was my first U.S. TV special, In Search for Houdini.
Okay.
And it aired on Halloween Day 1987. And it was a live 2-hour special on Houdini, the anniversary of Houdini's death. And it was concluded by a live seance to try and bring Houdini back from the great beyond. And there was a lot of great people. It was hosted by William Shatner. David Copperfield was on it, Harry Blackstone Jr., the amazing Randi, Steve Banachek. He was still Steve Shaw back then. The Pendragons, Glenn Falkenstein and Willard, and this young Canadian kid, Dean Gunnarson from Canada. And my role in the show, everybody was doing their Vegas acts, that things that they did of Houdini, like the Pendragons did their metamorphoses. Penn and Teller did a packing crate kind of comedy thing that they do. And I did two things. To promote the show, I was locked in a straitjacket and hung from a building, from the LA newspaper building that Houdini had hung from back in 1915. And it got a lot of good international press, Entertainment Tonight, various newspapers. And then live on the show, I was to do an escape where Sid Radner brought his Houdini cuffs that nobody had escaped from since Houdini. So I was supposed to go on, get locked up in the handcuffs, and see if I could get out. It's kind of like a challenge.
And what was that story also in which that he brought them to you, and you said you want to see him beforehand?
Yeah, well, just before we went live, and again, it's a live TV show, and just before we went on the air, Sid Radner, or I was going to do my part, the Pendragons were doing their metamorphoses, and some of your longtime listeners might recall that on that episode, the Pendragons, when they did the metamorphoses and Charlotte would do her costume change, she inadvertently lost her costume.
Yeah, she didn't come all the way out.
Yeah, because she kind of couldn't.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want, the show wasn't rated like that, and she'd lost her costume and was mostly naked inside the box. And when Jonathan opened it up and said, she couldn't. She couldn't get out of the box. And it's a live audience, live TV. There's no time delay. So, had to play. I mean, it was still cool. Like, nobody did the metamorphosis like the Pendragons. But it wasn't the finale that he wanted. So he had to close the box, carry it off stage. But I was on next to do these handcuffs. And Sid Radner had Houdini's handcuffs in a little brown paper bag. And I can't remember, there was like 3 or 4 sets of cuffs. And just before we went on, Sid goes, "Oh, I guess I should show you the handcuffs so you know what you're getting out of." And I turned to him, I said, no, don't show me. I don't want to know, right? I want to see them when I go out there. And he kind of looked at me and he paused for a moment and he stuck out his hand and shook my hand. He says, "That's the way Houdini would have done it." And we walked out on stage and I was thinking, this is the man that inherited all Houdini's props and that in Houdini stuff. And it's like, no, that's not the way Houdini would have done it. Houdini did it the way I did. I had Randi go the couple days before and talk to him and see what the handcuffs were. And then Randi fed me back the information. So unbeknownst to Sid, I knew what the handcuffs were in that
bag. So you didn't need to see them.
Like any good magician or mentalist or, Houdini. Houdini didn't go out there cold. So I knew what was in the bag without having to know, right?
That's great. Great
so
story.
I pulled a little bit one on Sid, and I managed to get out of the handcuffs and it was good. But what the interesting part of that story or that show was just before we went live on the air, the amazing Randi got hurt in the last rehearsal. Before the show, he was supposed to do Houdini's milk can. They'd shipped Houdini's original can from Niagara Falls down to Los Angeles. And Randi was supposed to do it. And while he was practicing it, he slipped the disc in his back and they had to pull him out of the can and take him to the hospital. When Randi was about 17 or so, he got hit by a car and messed up his back pretty bad. And, as performing and all these things over the years, it just popped out. So Randi couldn't do the milk can. So the producers came to me and said, "Hey, Randi wants you to do the milk can in replace of him." And I go, "The what? I never did the milk can before." The first time I saw one in person was the day before when Randi was unpacking it. And he asked if I wanted to come to the theater and see it. And I said, "Wow, sure. See Houdini's actual milk can?" It's like, who would say no to that?
Right.
And so I went and I saw it and whatever. And, Randi kind of said, "Oh, maybe someday we'll have to get you to perform this." And I was like, wow, man, that would be, awesome as a young escape artist.
You were about how old back then, 20?
I was 23. Yeah, I've been performing escapes for a number of years. I did my first big escape when I was 18, Halloween of 1982. I did an escape in Canada, hanging from a newspaper building that Houdini had hung from when he was in Winnipeg in 1923.
Mhm.
So that was my first big Halloween bet. So I'd been performing before that time, but just this was my first big, U.S. TV break.
Yeah.
And so, back with the show, they brought Randy back from the hospital. He told me what to do. The producers had to go out and get me a bathing suit and a towel because I wasn't planning to go swimming when I was in L.A. This was my first time in Los Angeles. I wasn't, none of this was really planned. And so without any rehearsal or anything, just with what Randy told me, and even though I was young, I had underwater experience getting out of handcuffs and things and hanging from buildings. So, I had some information to go on. I had to walk out on that stage for the first time.
Wow.
And get locked in Houdini's can and escape for a live audience and a live TV show.
Yeah, live TV. Wow.
I don't recommend is that way to go. But, with the escapes, the way I like to present them is I do like to keep it real and raw and meaningful and truthful. And that's what happened. And for a while after that, I escaped and got out. And a couple nights later on the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson was talking about this, Dean Gunnarson and how he saved the show and blah, blah, blah. And then they went into the seance. And as a young escape artist, if I would have written the script out, this is how I would have written it out, but it would have never have happened because, Randy was truly the greatest escape artist since Houdini, right? He was very famous. He did like 33 jailbreaks around the world. He had his own TV specials. He's written so many books. He was the number one escape artist in my opinion. And so to have to lead on or lead after Randy and fill in for him after he got hurt on a show all about, the great Houdini, live TV, and then get out. And then after that, Randy retired from the escapes. He said, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. And he named me as a successor to follow in his footsteps. That is the greatest gift somebody has ever given me. It was truly amazing.
I did not know that.
And he gave me his milk can. He gave me his handcuffs. He gave me his hanging apparatus that he used to hang over Niagara Falls, all his jailbreaking equipment, and, all these letters and stuff. And so that really helped launch me from a young Canadian escape artist into a bigger area. I had Randy's endorsement and more or less, he became my mentor and my friend. And, Randy was the smartest person I ever met. And, he was a very smart man. And so whenever I needed questions and things for that, he would help me.
Well, just as the mantle had been passed, I guess, from Keller to Thurston and then down currently to Lance Burton, have you thought about, I didn't know there was like in a way, something kind of being passed down, a mantle of sorts from him. Are there escapologists out there right now that you work with or perhaps you're thinking of this could be somebody I would like to designate and you'll take it from here. I'm out of here.
Well, I haven't specifically found a person and, people keep asking me, when are you going to retire? When are you going to stop? But, when you love something so much, right? Like you love magic.
Sure.
It's hard to walk away from. You want to continue it. Now, what I do is, again, very physical, but, I'm still hanging from cranes and getting in water tanks and stuff. And one day I'll be too old for this stuff, but not today.
What made Randy think that he was ready to go?
To be honest, I always told Randy, I said, you were too smart to be an escape artist, right? Randy kind of went into the escapes as a mean to publicize himself. And again, Randy was smart. He could figure things out and he did it, but that wasn't his true love. His true love was the investigations and the performers and the exposing and the mediums and stuff.
Correct.
So I think it was just the right time at the right place, and it was a chance for him to step back and move and endorse. And like I said, I've always tried to give the utmost respect to Randy and continue in his tradition and move things to the next level. And
so you really don't have any plans as far as the future
no,
the near future of retiring.
I've never written a book or done a video or anything.
You thinking about doing anything
of magic?
Well, I mean, Randi wrote several books.
Oh yeah. Randy didn't write any books on escapes. He wrote a lot of books. I think 13 books or so. But I feel with the art of escape, it's not something that you can just learn in a book. It comes a lot from the school of hard knocks, or again, the real mentorship of it, right? Because it's not just the aspect of getting out, right? And you see lots of magicians.
There's a lot of theater to it.
A lot of theater. And
the way you got the crowd going yesterday morning, I've heard so many people say that was so exciting because we were really into it, the way that he kind of ran around and shook hands with everybody and going, hey, let's go. And that the music is hard driving and everything then too. And the theatrics of getting chained and then getting in there and in and out and whatnot. Everything that you were doing, it seems like, was getting the audience to love you even more in every moment and feeling like they were with you. Like you were saying, not just taking a deep breath when I count to 3, but beyond that, they were still with you prior to that because you were interacting with the audience.
Thank you very much for saying that. And that is an important part, is engaging the audience. And this is what I think made Houdini so successful, is that he was able to do the same, to engage people, get them involved, and to get them to care about him.
Sure.
So when he escaped, they didn't want to see him die. They wanted to see him live.
Succeed.
And so, like some people study card magic or mentalism or illusion, I've spent my life studying escapes. I can't do a card track. I can't.
You can pronounce it as direct.
It's like, but I've studied Houdini and I've studied escapes and I've seen them from a perspective that few people have, right? I've been inside that can, I've jumped off bridges handcuffed, I've hung from buildings and cranes, 1,000 times over my career all around the world. And so that's an important part. And I like to be genuine. I like to be real. And I like to get the audience in.
Mm-hmm.
But with the art of escape, as I mentioned, I feel it's the hardest discipline to do. Not necessary to always escape, because yesterday they set the world record of the Siberian chain escape.
Right.
Everybody, little kids, everybody popped out of the chains. But that doesn't make it a good escape.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it a good escape is the presentation. If you look, there's an old historic picture of Houdini wrapped up in a Siberian chain escape. Back then, it wasn't called a Siberian chain escape, but he did it. And I saw Patrick Culleton do a lecture one time, and he took the chain escape that Houdini did, and he didn't pop out in 2 seconds, but he worked it and did it and slowly struggled and got out. And it was like, wow, that's what Houdini would have done, right? So with the escapes, it's hard in the aspects of where you pull out a straitjacket, you pull out some handcuffs, and the audience knows what you're going to do.
Right.
With magic, you always have the advantage. They don't know what you're going to do. But with the escapes, they know you're going to get out. It would be like if a comedian came on stage and told the punchline,
right,
and then went back and told the joke, right? You're telling them what's up. So, and no disrespect to anybody, but I see a lot of magicians, they forget that, and they think the getting out is the important part. Well, it is important. It's very important,
sure,
but it's the buildup. It's the suspense. It's getting the people to care that they want to see you succeed. That, I think, is the real magic in a good escape.
I think you said that quite eloquently. That's great. I've had this conversation with Jonathan Goodwin after he had
Jonathan's a person I respect greatly, and he's one of the few that have done the escapes very successfully, and I think for this reason.
Yeah, but I was discussing this very thing with him as far as, do you think that whenever you start into an escape that the audience is invested, that they really care? Do they think you're really going to get injured, or you're really going to harm yourself in some way, or that you're not going to get out, they're going to have to be cut out? Because going into it, I think, especially on television, they're not going to show something that's going to be hazardous or somebody dies. But going into that, I'm just wondering about how much of that the audience gets into. But you said that well, because that's exactly what Jonathan was saying, as I recall too, of saying that it is the interaction and the investment, I guess, of emotion by the audience that they have of believing that, well, something could happen. I don't think it will, but I think there are enough safety precautions and this isn't going to happen. But still, I was just talking with John Cox about the Houdini II, who was doing his upside down. He said, I realized that there are a lot of safety measures that were taken, but however, I was still anxious when you're hanging upside down because something could happen, But anyhow,
absolutely. But that's a good word, investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need the audience to fill that investment in what's going on. And, sadly, Jonathan, most people know what happened, right? He was filming for an
Explain this, by the way, if you don't mind, because there are some people who are thinking, okay, I don't know Jonathan Goodwin, or I would suggest you go back and listen to the episode that he and I had talked about. This was back when he was still with the Illusionists, and it was within just a few months that he had this tragic accident that has impaired him for life, and in a wheelchair then now, although he has moved on. There's so many things he's doing that are positive that I can't say enough great things about Jonathan, but to explain what happened on that story and who he is.
Yeah, well, he was in the Illusionists. He did other shows. He had his television series on Escapes. And yeah, he was filming an episode, I believe, for like an extreme edition of America's Got Talent kind of thing. And he was hanging upside down between two cars, and the cars let go early and crushed him in the middle of it while he was hanging like, almost 100 feet in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And it paralyzed him from the waist down. And he's still paralyzed, and, he'll be paralyzed for life, as, he's told me. And no more escapes, right? No more of the daring escapes that he did. But you're right. He's taken that and made it into a positive spin. He wrote a really, really nice book.
Great book. He's also consulted and got some creative ideas. I think this thing with the dartboard that he's was selling and has some really cool things.
He didn't surrender. He didn't give up, right? He's just, found a different avenue to create his
He's inspiring.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. And, I've been in the same boat where, as an escape artist, and I try and be very physical. Over the last 45 years, I've probably broken, almost every bone in my body.
I was going to ask you about that.
From my big toe and tearing out my knees, and, I've busted up my ribs. I've lost body parts. I've busted out my teeth. I got stitches all over the place. And in fact, one time I even died while I was doing an escape, and they had to bring me back to life. I was young. I was like 19 years old, and I was doing another Halloween tribute to Houdini. And they locked me in a wooden coffin, nailed it on, wrapped in chains, and they threw it into an icy red river in Canada, which are cold in Halloween. And I had 10,000 people come out to watch and cheer me on.
10,000.
And just the way the coffin sank, couldn't get out. This is one of the escapes that's on When Magic Goes Horribly Wrong on Amazon Prime. But I couldn't get out. And I got trapped underwater in this coffin. And even at that age, I just was, okay, don't panic, stay calm. Boom, wait, they're going to pull you out, and put my hands to my head and just tried to relax and stay calm. And then poof, I got to see the lights at the end of the tunnel.
Wow.
And everything flashing by, that depth experience that people talk about, that was me. And I don't know how long it was by the time they got me out of the water and got me into the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And then all of a sudden I woke up, and they'd, pumped oxygen and brought me back alive. But when I was doing this, I was going to university, and I was very poor and struggling, but I paid somebody to videotape this professionally for like $500.
Mm-hmm.
And so the footage is there, and it was, all the media was there. It was on all the national news. It made the front page of every Canadian newspaper. It made a full page in the National Enquirer. Like, it was quite an incident.
And And when they pulled the coffin out, I assume you were still in it. And
I was still in it. They had to pry the lid off, take the chains, and everybody thought I was doing a disappearance, that I was going to open up and I wasn't there and I was going to reappear somewhere else. But no, I was in there. They pulled my limp blue body out, and the ambulance people got me back to life. But it was one of those things in life, again, like Jonathan, I learned so much by failing. And, we don't always succeed at everything we do. And it's only a failure if you don't learn anything. And it taught me so much about underwater escapes, being prepared. And, I got a little lucky, but, maybe Houdini was looking after me too. But rather than just becoming an escape from a coffin, it became an escape from death. And it proved that what I do is real and dangerous. And I would never, ever want that to happen again. But looking back on it, I'm glad that it happened when I was young because of the things that I learned from it. Mm-hmm. I would never want anybody to experience, but it was a positive experience.
Yeah, that's something that you wouldn't ask for, certainly, but
never. But never in a million years.
Yeah.
And, a bit of a wake-up call, because when you're young, you're cocky and you know everything and all the answers. But I was like, on that day, I didn't have all the answers.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If that would have happened perhaps a few years later, you might have thought, maybe this isn't for me.
Well, I think that's what my mom was kind of hoping, like, okay, you're done, right? And it's like, no, it just made me more determined to continue on and do, what I'm doing. And, since then, I've done lots of TV shows and, getting locked in a car and crushed. Lance Burton later used a magic version of that on one of his TV shows. I've done all Houdini's Great Escapes, the water torture cell. I have actually, I collect magic and escape stuff. I have Doug Henning's water torture cell that he used on his first TV special in 1975.
Wow. Okay, I did not know that.
In my collection. Doug Henning was a very kind man.
You probably knew him being from Canada.
Yeah, he was from Winnipeg, my hometown. And
did you know him growing up?
Not growing up, because he was older. He'd already left and moved on to Broadway by the time I got going. But when he'd come back and stuff for away, he was there, and he was still touring when I was performing and stuff. So he did get to know, and he again, when I was young, when I was going to university, I worked a summer in the children's hospital doing magic for the kids, because there was no cartoon station or anything. They were watching soap operas all day. And so I used to go around and do magic and teach the magic and have something different. And I met a young boy there, Philip Hornan, that had cancer. And he was a keen student. So we ended up becoming friends and teaching him lots of magic. And then he wanted to learn how to get out of handcuffs. And I said, you know what, I can teach you to get out of handcuffs, but I don't think you can do it, because he was dealing with the physicalities of his bone cancer and that. I taught him, and he was able to do it. So then we started, doing shows at the Cancer Foundation. And I had a friend that I could go to the police departments with, and we would travel on weekends a lot to like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and get them to lock us up. We'd go to different police departments. These two young guys, hey, you got any handcuffs? You got a straitjacket? Can you lock us in the jail cell? And we would escape.
And they would do it.
They would do it. It was a different time.
It was.
I don't think you could do that in today's age. But then we would talk them in, and, I don't know if they felt sorry for us or they just liked us or what. And so we would get them, when we're done, to write a letter on their letterhead of what we escaped from that. And I have a pile of letters that Philip and myself escaped from. And, unfortunately, Phil had a relapse, and they couldn't do anything more. And he became terminal, but he was granted a Make-A-Wish trip.
Okay.
And he said, Dean, they give me a wish. What should I do? I said, you know what? Go see Doug Henning. And so they gave him a trip with him and his parents, and they flew him down to Los Angeles. Doug still had his warehouse in Santa Monica, and Doug gave him a tour of his warehouse and things. And he gave Philip, some of his little magic props and a coin from Houdini that he used on one of his TV shows. And, really, it was really special. So Doug and I became friends also from that, our relationship with Philip. And then when Philip got really bad, he paid for him to go get treatment with him and his mom to Boston.
Doug did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nobody knows this. To an Ayurvedic clinic, like the Transcendental Meditation Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it was a little too much too late. But Doug paid for his mom and him for the plane tickets there. He put them up in accommodation. He paid all the fees and stuff, like $50,000.
A lot of money back then.
A lot of money back then. And, Philip's parents, they've been going through this for like 5 years and, not working and stuff. And they were very proud people. And after Phil passed away, Doug called them and, gave his apologies. They said, you know what? We want to pay you back for what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And Doug said, no. And he said, I don't want anybody to ever know about this. This is my gift to Phil.
What a story.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of person Doug was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't for the media. It wasn't for TikTok cameras giving somebody a sandwich on the side of the street. This was Doug Gunnarson, man. This was real magic. Sorry,
wow.
It's still touching meaningful after all these years.
Yeah, because he was such a close friend of yours, and and Doug had given everything to help do anything he could to help him live longer.
And to me, that's the real magic in what we do.
Mm-hmm.
He created a magic moment and made it special.
Wow.
But like I said, that's a story you won't read about, you won't hear. That's the real Doug. So I always respected him for that.
Well, I respect him even more now. Yeah. I've not heard that before either. That's an amazing story. Just when I think I've heard it all, because I hang out with Chip Romero a lot.
Oh yeah, Chip, yeah. So and again, I love Chip, and he's on the list for my water torture. So when I'm done with it, right, he's right there. I said, hey,
I'm sure,
no problem. It's in my will, Chip. There you go. We'll figure something out and stuff. So yeah, I've had some nice conversations with Chip, and of course, he's the man when it comes to Henning.
Doug Henning for sure. And so as far as some of the types of escapes that you do, are there some that you like more than others? Do you like the bigger, more dramatic, dangerous ones where it's involving, thousands of people watching, or something in which that it's a smaller, more intimate thing, or handcuffs, straitjackets? I mean, what is it that's one of your favorite types of?
Well, excuse me, over the years, I do all. I mean, you can't make your living on TV anymore, but, you do TV so people see you and, they'll come to your live show. So I like what we did yesterday. You engage with the audience, they get a feel of it. Over the years, I've done like TV specials like World's Most Dangerous Magic, locked up hanging by my toes on a trapeze over the Hoover Dam in Las Vegas, or hanging over the alligators trying to escape, or Disneyland Magic Kingdom with Siegfried and Roy and Lance Burton and Penn and Teller locked in a shark cage underwater, or like I said, Guinness Book World Records and different TV shows around the world. But yeah, I mean, I like the live shows. And for me, I think a straitjacket escape presented well is still just as strong as today as it is with Houdini. Mm-hmm. And, I was in China last Christmas and New Year's doing shows, and, locked me up a straitjacket, chains, tie me to my ankles to the crane, light the rope on fire, and pull me up 150 feet in the air. And like I said, I've been hanging upside down since 1982. Yeah. And I keep thinking, okay, my body's getting a little busted up, that it's, might be time to pull that out. But it's just, you do it right. People love it. And it's what I find really cool is when I can do my escapes in another country with people that don't understand English, a word of what I'm saying. Right. And you can still translate what you want and that feeling and that emotion. And they still have that investment in what you want to do and what you're doing.
And you can feel that from them because the way you
feel
hear
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And, I use translators and you have to change your presentation in different countries to know what your audience, how they react to things. But like I said, for me personally, that has been one of the biggest satisfactions where I can, I've been working in China for over 30 years. I've done probably over 500 big shows in China all across the country, and they relate. I've performed in Thailand and Malaysia, and I've probably done over 100 shows over the years in Taiwan, go to India, Iceland, South America, Colombia, Venezuela, the Caribbean, and all these places. Like I said, if you can relate, and it's the same with magic, right? Magic can be universal because it is universal. If you can take that and do it in another country and make that magic real as a performer, that's the most rewarding experience you can have.
Is there some country or nation or area of this country that seems to enjoy escapes more than others? I mean, when you go there, it's like, oh, these people are the best. I mean, they get it and enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I like performing in Colombia a lot. Again, the Spanish, the kind of that bullfighting
mentality.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like boom! Oh, they love the excitement and stuff, And again, same with China. Like like I said, I've been working there for over 30 years. Hanging from cranes and chained to roller coasters and underwater, like all kinds of stuff, and learning how to deal with that market. And like I said, I've had great success, there. And I've performed lots in the States over the years and stuff. But again, being Canadian, immigration and working visas and stuff has gotten more and more complicated over the years. So, I don't enjoy that part of it, but
do you do much consulting? I mean, you touched on the thing saying roller coaster escape, and it reminds me obviously of when Lance Burton had done that. Did you consult with him on that, or was that somebody else?
No, I didn't consult with him on that, and I don't want to talk about Lance the way he did his roller coaster escape, but he did it in a more safe fashion, and it was still kind of cool, but. I do consult when I go to China and they chain me to a roller coaster. I'm in front of that coaster. In fact, one time I was doing it on a TV special in Beijing, and we had to film in the morning before this amusement park opened, and it was one of the fastest roller coasters in China, and it went like 70 miles an hour.
Wow!
And as I'm getting out, and I knew where the roller coaster was going to be at 1 minute and 8 seconds, which is where I was. And I knew I had to get off before that. And again, you don't want to get out in 30 seconds and you got 38 seconds of roller coaster going, right? That's nobody's going to pay to see that, right? Even though that's the safer option. And so, you try and time it. Okay, it takes me this long to get out of this lock and this chain. And you try and put together a mathematical equation of the maximum that you can get locked up and get out of by that time, right? It's it's the rational way to do this. So I knew how much I could do. And so as the roller coaster's coming, I'm there, and my safety coordinator missed the time clock. He was giving me the times every 5-10 seconds, and he missed the count. And so I'm going and I'm thinking, okay, I thought I had like 5 more seconds than I actually had, and all of a sudden I realized, it's coming around the loop. And I was like, I got to go. And so I dive off the roller coaster. I have a picture of this, and I'm flying through the air like Superman with the chains. It's one of the most amazing pictures of me escaping.
Wow.
And it was one frame from a camera picture. And I don't know what film speeds are now, but at that time it was like, I think 26 frames per second. And the very next frame is the roller coaster hitting me. It had these little kind of Batman wings out the side. And the roller coaster, as I'm diving through the air, the wing hit my ankle and busted my ankle. And I start spinning through the air like a spinning top, boom, landing on the crash mat. And my safety coordinator's like, and they're filming this for a show. We got a live audience. And it busted my ankle. And I told him, I yelled, I said, man, I'm hit. And he goes, yeah, I know. But the TV, they don't know, right? They're just filming this. And it's like, I had to follow it through because there's no way I was going to be able to get back on that roller coaster and do it again. And we had the ending sequence of where I was supposed to get up and the coaster would come back around. And I go, yeah, and the coaster goes by. I couldn't make it. I couldn't get up fast enough to make that mark, but I still got up. I'm looking, I go, yeah. And then I'm high-fiving the audience that's there, go. And then
limping around.
Oh, yeah, I was in a lot of pain. Anyway, but I played it through and I went through, boom, good. I said, okay, that's rough, that's a good. And I went down and I told the producer, I said, I'm in trouble. And so the Chinese are very much of what they call saving face. You can't embarrass them in any way. And we convinced them that I could do this safely because 3 months earlier, they had a roller coaster accident in another amusement park and about 5 or 6 people died.
Wow.
But they were able to kind of keep it quiet out of the media, so they didn't want anything to go wrong. They were very concerned about that. So I couldn't turn around and tell the park, hey, I got hurt, take me to an ambulance. It would have been maybe an international incident between Canada and China. I don't know.
So they didn't bring an ambulance. They just had to quietly take you to a hospital?
Yeah. So I told the producer, they got me a car, and we snuck to the hospital. And I got to the hospital, and it wasn't a really good hospital. And I looked and I said, this ain't going to work. They wanted to cut off my boot and stuff. I said, man, you can't cut off my boot. If you cut off my boot, I'll never get it back on because my foot, I could feel the blood and the pressure and everything. I said, you got to get me on a plane back to Canada. So
From China.
Wow. And it's about a 13-hour flight from there to Vancouver and back to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So they booked me on the next flight. They put me on
with your boot still on.
With my boot still on. And the only pain medication I had was Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol 3s. And I used to, that, and they got me in, I got back to Canada, went from the airport to the hospital. Then they cut off my boot. My foot was so swollen. They had to kind of slice open my ankle and drain all the blood but they couldn't even put a cast on or anything because my foot was too swollen up. Said, you got to come back in a few days. And they gave me antibiotics and things and stitched me back up.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then I came back in a few days and I said, you know what, man, I got shows coming up. I said, can we do this without a cast? He said, well, if you can deal with the pain. So they splinted it up and I got another boot that was a few sizes bigger than my other one. So I had 2 sizes of boots and I needed crutches to keep off it. And then I had shows. I could stand there and not do some of the physical stuff or, do some things. And then when I'm done, I need my crutches to walk. But, that was 2010, but my ankle is still never recovered. It still hurts as I'm talking now.
Like arthritis kind of a thing, or is it kind of like
arthritis,
or
and I think it didn't heal right. I think on the bottom plate where the bone break, it kind of shifted a little bit.
Did the doctor say if he would have waited longer, we would have had to amputate or something? I mean,
they
was it
didn't
that
go
serious,
into that,
or?
but they weren't happy with that. But again, I didn't want to end up on a long-term thing in
China.
In China, right? Get home. So, it was a close call, and I've done the roller coaster since then a couple of times as well, right? So it's like
the same method.
Get back on the horse and ride again, right? Buck you off, get on. You're from Texas. I grew up in Texas. That's it, right? Let's get back up. So so is there. But that's just part of my story as an escape artist.
Wow. So do you have to keep in pretty good physical shape? I mean, do you work out a lot, or?
Well, I'm 62 now, so my shape has changed a lot, since I was young. But I try and stay physically fit and stuff. I don't work out at gyms, but where I live in Canada, I live outside the city in the country in a national, right on the edge of a national park. So I have a large acreage there and a enchanted forest. And I have my big shop there that I call the morgue. I've had numerous TV shows come and film there where I have my magic collection, and it's not open to the public, but it's really cool. And so I keep quiet. So I live in a forest. I do physical stuff. I chop firewood and, move things and, cut trails. So that's the way I kind of balance my body and my mind, right? Because you have to.
And your
balance.
kids have gotten, how old are they then now?
Yeah, I have 2 daughters. They're one's in university and one's getting ready to go to university and stuff too. So yeah, it's a different part. So that's my great escape. In fact, that's what I call my ranch, the Great Escape Ranch and stuff. So it's
wow. Now, when you get booked, do you have an agent or do you do it yourself? And well, what kinds of people book you? Are they corporate deals or are they state fairs? Everything, obviously, but
yeah, I think as being a performer, to really survive in this business, you have to be versatile, right?
Yeah,
be
flexible.
When we did that escape in the Houdini Plaza, right? I mean, there was no stage. You worked there. They set the sound. You have to adapt, right? It would have been easy to say, "Oh, no, I need curtains. I need this. And it's like, no, that's not the way the real world works. You have to adapt. Sure, I do lots of shows and for corporate events and stuff where you have all the lightings or, the Vegas showroom and stuff, but you have to be flexible and work. So yeah, like I said, I do a lot of corporate stuff. Last summer I did the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah.
It's
a big thing.
The biggest rodeo fair in North America. They have like 1.4 million people.
Yeah, it's bigger than anything in Texas.
It's huge. A lot of Texans come up for it.
I know.
And I did 23 shows, locked in the water tank and hanging upside down. We had a great response. So yeah, I do fairs, do television, do corporate stuff, do keynote speaking. And I'm.
What is your subject on keynote speaking?
I talk when it's a non-magic audience. I talk about achieving the impossible in your daily life. So, because a lot of things that I've done, nobody else in the world has ever done. Lots of people have climbed Mount Everest. Not that it's easy, but it's become a tourist thing. But some of the things that I've done, nobody else in the world has ever done. And a lot of it is really hard to rehearse, right? You can't just practice it, right?
That's true.
How do you practice getting in a car and going through a car crusher or locked in a metal coffin and thrown in the ocean with a bunch of sharks swimming around you?
Very good point.
Or locked in a coffin and buried alive for 2 days with no food or water in India.
Talk about magicians getting flight time, because doing show after show, but you can't do those kinds of things.
Yeah. So, I use different techniques, and I don't know if you've ever gone skydiving.
I have not.
You should while you still have that chance, because if anybody goes skydiving and said they weren't scared the first time that they skydive, they're lying. And you have to overcome that initial fear of jumping out of a plane and going down.
Well, it's like whenever I've done some rappelling. That's another thing. Whenever you rappel, falling back and then taking that first step, into nothing and trusting the rope's going to hold you, that's scary.
Yeah, it's the same type of feeling. You have to trust your equipment and you've done everything right. Visibly, if you haven't, you're gonna bounce. But with skydiving, they use a technique called dirt diving. And it's a visualization technique. You see in your mind what you need to do when you exit that plane, how you're going to position yourself, where you're going to be, where you're going to do your count, go. And you actually physically move through it and you implant this in your mind. And it's kind of like, being repetitive with like a card technique or something. But this, you don't have the mechanics of the plane or the parachute, but you have to use your mind. And you implant that into your mind. So when it comes time to do it, your mind feels like it's been there.
Right.
And so that's just a little part of how I talk. And you can incorporate that, say, before you go on stage and perform, right? You're going out to an audience for the first time and people get nervous and anxious. So I always, including myself, so I always visualize myself, okay, I'm going to be out in the audience. You've seen the room. The audience is going to be positioned here and there. I'm going to have my table set up there, that. And so I feel like it's here. So when I go out on stage, I feel like I've been there. Right.
Right. It's kind of like with golf. Whenever that I play golf, you try to visualize the shot.
Yes.
You kind of say, okay, how far I'm going to go? Am I going to go a little bit left or right? And where's the best place for me to hit this? And so when I use this club, I expect and hope that it's going to be like this. And by visualizing the shot, you can hit it a lot closer to that as opposed to just stepping out there and whacking at it.
Yeah, that's an excellent example. You don't just walk up and hit the ball, right? And the more that you do that, I'm sure you felt, the better you get to what you wanted to achieve.
Sure.
So sometimes the wind kicks in or whatever. But.
That's true. Yeah.
It's always the wind.
That's what it is. Yeah. You got to blame something over there on that.
Yeah.
To start to close, then what are some tips that you would give to someone who might be interested in getting involved with that? As you say, things have changed. It's hard to get some television experience. And I guess if you can go on like a talk show in the morning or something and say, okay, well, you got to be a lot of guys do comedy straitjackets and everything, but there are handcuffs and different kinds of things. Anyhow, what would you suggest?
Well, I don't recommend escapes because it's a hard market to try and figure out and where to go. But studying Houdini, learning the past and the escapers, because again, you're going to be using some of the same props, but you need to find out a more modern way to present it. Because you still want to get out of straitjackets or handcuffs or chains and find that. And doing it the old-fashioned way, reading books, reading about Houdini and figuring how you can incorporate that to the style of an escape that you want to do. And, there's not many people that have chosen this path, but a lot of magicians want to incorporate an escape or something in their show. And a lot of them will do like a rope tie, like the Keller rope tie and stuff. And again, that can be a nice little difference maker in your
thumb cuffs.
Show.
Get some volunteers up and different kinds of things.
Thumb cuffs are great. A thumb cuff you can use for a restaurant, walk around. When I was younger, I used to do thumb cuffs all the time. I always carried them like a magician carrying a deck of cards. Here, lock them up. They can't get out. Lock me up. Boom. And then I used to, when I lecture on escapes, it's one of the things that I teach. And you get out, and then I'd make the thumb cuffs disappear. And sometimes I'd produce a dove or a rose or something. You give it to the table, and then you walk around to the next table, reset, find your thumb cuffs, and continue. And it was a good a good piece. Even the shackle escape, right? The oval loop that Doug Kinney made famous. Some people, they laugh at it, or they can't do it. And it's like anything. If you present that well and with meaning, it's a very strong effect. At the convention here, Larry Callow from Eagle Magic Shop in Minneapolis. I think it's the oldest magic shop in operation. Yeah. And when I was a teenager, I lived in Canada, but and growing up in Texas, I was a Dallas Cowboy fan. I love the Dallas Cowboys. And when I bleed, my blood's blue and silver. I'm sorry if that offends anybody on your podcast. I know, Mike Miller would probably be turning it off right now. Yeah, being an Eagle fan, and we go at it. But, I bought my uncle used to take me down to the Dallas Cowboy games whenever they played the Minnesota Vikings. And so that started when I was 13 years old. And then I got him to take me to the Eagle Magic Shop so I could, all the money that I'd saved up and buy stuff. And I used to go see Larry. And I got my very first set of shackles and thumb cuffs from Larry. And so he's here, and we were talking about that. He remembers, he says, I remember your uncle used to come and drop you off, and, you'd spend there all day, and I'm trying to lock up and get out of here, and he hasn't come back and pick you up. It's like, hey, I'm not a babysitting store here, And, but I don't do the shackles very often, but when I do get an opportunity to do something for kids, it's in there. And again, when presented right, it's a very strong effect, right? It's all in the presentation.
Yeah, it goes back to the very first thing, kind of full circle as far as the presentation goes, and getting the audience involved and emotionally invested, in that then too.
It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Well, I think you kind of said that quite eloquently right there, because that leads to my last question about what is your magic word. It's not what you do, but it's how you do it, perhaps. Because I always like to close by asking my guests, what is it that's important to you in your life, So what would you say?
Well, to me, what's important in my whole life is my dog, right? I love my dog. Okay. I love my daughters, my girlfriend and stuff. And I think I love what I do. And like I said, I'll continue as long as I can. But life is about balance, right? The more you push one in, the more you have to balance the other. And I chose very early in my life, in the steps of Houdini, not to drink alcohol, not to smoke cigarettes, not to do drugs, not that I have anything against those, but for me to be the best that I could be, I didn't want to have that. And again, being from Texas, my biggest weakness is Dr. Pepper. I love
good man.
Dr.
Me
Pepper.
too.
And when I found out I had to come down, they wanted me to do the milk can escape for the SAM. I hadn't performed in about 15, 20 years. I'd taken it out and I created a version that didn't need a curtain like what we saw yesterday or we saw here at the Houdini Plaza. That can't, no curtains, no mirrors, everybody sees it. And I thought that's more acceptable for today's audience.
I agree.
They don't want to look at a curtain.
No, they don't.
Yeah. And so I think so. I brought it off my display and when I performed it almost 40 years ago, I was 128 pounds.
Wow.
And I used to jump in and out of that thing 3 times a day, boom, boom, boom. And I go to get in and it was like, oh boy. It was like putting a marble in a wine bottle, trying to push it in.
Yeah.
And I got it in and twist and turn and I got in. I was like, oh man, this is good. I can fit, no problem. I go to get out and it was like,
oops,
trying to take a marble out of a wine bottle.
Yeah.
And it took me a little bit of time, but I got out. And again, you get claustrophobic, you're stuck. I was like, okay, don't panic, just relax. There's no water. And all those things get triggered. And so I went and I told my girl, I said, okay, that's it. I can't have Dr. Pepper for the next 2 months. I can't have ice cream. And to try and, like a fighter training for a fight, right? You have to prepare and train when you have something special that you need to do. And I've done that with all my big escapes, all my career. And so I got it set so we could do it. And then just before I came down here, I figured, I better put some water in it because I hadn't had water in it in 15, 20 years. And I go to put water in it and there was a crack along the bottom seam. And it was like, oh no. So I didn't plan to do the milk can escape here one last time.
Mm-hmm.
Houdini Plaza, I thought it'd be kind of cool. And at the last minute, I had to take that away and do the can. So I quit drinking Dr. Pepper for the last 2 months
in order to be able to fit in the can.
Yeah.
But then you couldn't do the can because of the crack. Well, I wondered why. I saw it sitting over to the side, but you did a 55-gallon drum. That was just as impressive.
So I still brought it for the significance of Houdini.
Yeah.
And that was the can that I got from the amazing Randi. And in particular, that can was used on an episode of Happy Days in 1978 when Randi was on the episode playing himself. They I don't know if you've seen that episode, but maybe some of your listeners are too young to even remember Happy Days. But some will remember Fonzie and Richie Cunningham. But the show script was that they invited Randi to come to a show to raise money for the orphanage. And so Randi agrees, and he goes to do the show for the orphanage. And just before he goes on the stage, he needs a glass of water. And Potsy gives him a glass of water. It turns out to be vodka. Randi, being not drinking, allergic to alcohol, is intoxicated. He can't do the show. So Fonzie goes on and does the show.
Okay.
And he's, making canes appear. He does the magic show. And at the end of it was supposed to be the Houdini milk can, the can that I have with me here. And so, Fonzie gets to the end of the show, comes off. How's Randi doing? Randi is still kind of hungover. He can't do it. And all the orphans are going, milk can, milk can, milk can.
Funny.
So Fonzie goes out and he performs a milk can. And he really got in the can, in the water, lock him up, and he's in there. And Randi comes running on the stage, no, get him out. And Fonzie escapes. So the can that I have, is, like I said, was on Happy Days. Henry Winkler, Fonzie was actually in that can at one time. So it's just kind of a cool...
interesting story.
Yeah. I met Henry Winkler years later, and I asked him about that. And he said, yeah, he was really in there. One take, that's all he would do.
He remembered it.
Yeah. So, and it was interesting because that story is very similar to what happened to me when I did the search for Houdini, 3 years later. So,
for kind of a last minute, you had to do something kind of funny. Okay, so wrapping up there, you said that you got it, that your word to be balance, to be able to be, keep your life in balance. It's important to have balance in your life.
I think that's important. Good. I think that's important in magic. I think that's important in business. I think it's important in family life, right? that to me is the magic in life, finding that balance in life, right? So we're not always on one side of the spectrum or other, but finding that balance. And I think when you find balance, you find peace and you find success. And, sometimes you need to push harder than others.
Yeah.
And other times you need to pull back.
It's great. Dean, thanks very much. I appreciate the stories and everything that you've given us. Man, I can't believe this hour just quickly
just
went by like it did over here. So
again, I'm truly honored to be on your show, Scott. And like I said, I love Texas, and always a little bit of my heart still there. And I have some of my videos. I don't do a lot. I'm not really good with computers, but I have some of my escapes that I talked about on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 different YouTube channels and some of there. And then I have my episode on Escape or Die. I don't have the shows anymore, but it's on Danger TV on YouTube if somebody wants to go watch those episodes.
Okay.
And then there's an author wrote a book about me a few years ago called Dean Gunnarson, The Making of an Escape Artist. And it talks about my early years of my friendship with Philip and how we did that. And I only talk about that. I don't make a cent off that book. I invested a lot of time and effort getting out, and I donated all my proceeds to the Cancer Society
Nice.
for the work that they do. But if people want to learn or read more, I think it's on Amazon or eBay and stuff. And I don't sell them, but other retailers do. But just thank you. And what I've said after every single show, nothing is impossible if you truly believe in yourself. So.
Wow, that's a good way to close right there.
Yeah.
Dean, thanks very much. I appreciate your words and friendship. And so for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Dean Gunnarson. This is Scotty out. Thank you very much, Dean, for being my guest this week. It was quite insightful, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to sit and chat with you and get to know you a lot better. I appreciate you taking the time and coming down to Appleton, Wisconsin, and actually you had given a talk with the group there that was for the life members of the SAM and some other things that you did while you were, of course, your performances were outstanding. But anyhow, just wanted to say thank you. And I know the rest of the people who were at the convention certainly enjoyed your performances and your attendance and participation as well. Well, I think that's going to be kind of a wrap. We've kind of gone a little bit longer here than I prefer to go today. And I'm going to actually rest a little bit. And we'll see what happens on the other side next week. I've got another person who was actually at that convention that I had a chance to sit down with and chat with. And I know you're going to enjoy that. And one way of keeping up with who's going to be on from week to week, of course, is to join the pod letter. And that way I give you not only information on who's going to be coming up the next week, but also, of course, some suggestions from the archives. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember to keep balance in your life. This is Scotty out.